Hello. So in this video reflection, I want to talk about how I brought one research-specific ATL skill into my grade 8 math class. So this specific skill is supporting students to analyze data in order to identify solutions or make decisions. So in order to bring this ATL into my lesson, I actually tried to come up with one activity that can direct them to their summative assessment preparation. So in this activity, students are given two scenarios in which they have to decide, first of all, what would be the best route for a delivery person. The second one is how to use network theory to see how subway stations are connected. All right, okay. So in this special class, we're going to work on one ATL skill. We work on research skill in math. And let's take a look at the details here. The red one here. Okay. We're going to think about how you can support yourself or how this class can support you to analyze data in order to identify solutions or make decisions. Okay? So we'll come back to the keywords here later, but let's take a look at the scenario. Okay. So the scenario tells you how we can make the best decision. Okay? So let's consider. Albert, let's consider there's a delivery person, his name is Thomas. He needs to deliver packages to several locations shown on the map. You can find the map on page 71, in your textbook, or here later I'll show on the screen, okay? Here you have two diagrams here, okay? We want to work on the first one first, okay? Okay, let's consider this person, Thomas. He wants to consider the distances between the towns or the nodes. Okay, you can take a look at the distance there, okay, in kilometers. All right, so in the next 15 minutes or so, I want you to work on these 5 questions. The first one is, starting from point 1, how many paths can Thomas take to get to town F? Okay, number 2, which route is the shortest one? Why? Okay, so in this reflection, I want to speak about 4 dimensions that I use for reflecting on my teaching and also students' perception. The first one is, how does a teacher support students to develop and investigate research questions? I would say for this one, I would rate myself somewhere between developing and proficient, because at first I provided one video for basic knowledge and also skills and terms and also history behind network theory, just to give some background information for students. And also I created a series of student-related and real-life questions for them to engage with the topic. Technology that we use for recalculating. What do you use? You look at your phone. How do you know you can travel from here to Taipei, Suwon, Taipei?
GPS.
Suwon has linked to the GPS. You can find like traditional map, right? Okay, so you can see that the technology now we're using for digital era to be GPS or Google Maps, right? Throughout the process, I provided guiding questions and I encouraged students to demonstrate their understanding and reasoning in front of the whole class. So I would say if I want to move on from developing to proficient, I need to engage them with more daily conversation, observations, and also longer time. Speaking of the second dimension, how does a teacher support students to select and use search tools to find and evaluate and organize information? Again, I would rate myself between developing and proficient, because this group is actually quite diverse in terms of their mathematical skills and communication skills in English. So throughout this lesson, I worked with some advanced students for generating their hypotheses and also solutions. But for some struggling students, I modeled and provided tips more explicitly. So all the differentiated instruction happened during small group work. So I would say in general, we did well, but I just need more time to guide the struggling student to catch up. Speaking of the third dimension, how does the teacher support students to understand and apply ethical practices for sharing information? Looking back on my lesson, I would say that this one is kind of missing in this activity because we dealt with open sources in this activity, so ethical concerns weren't really in the picture.
But I would say though, more conversations in the future can be number one, data collection and personal privacy. That means that how I can engage students to think about, okay, so in the future, when they collect data, how can they avoid privacy issues? And also the second one, how individual decision making may influence the public. So they want to consider, okay, so if in the future they are the decision maker, how can they make sure that their own decision is not too subjective but objective enough for the public good? Speaking of the fourth dimension, how does the teacher support students to analyze data in order to identify solutions or make decisions? Again, I would rate myself between developing and proficient because data and tools were provided at first, but students were guided to come up with any solutions or reasons as long as they are convincing enough for me and for the whole classroom. I would say students were guided to connect this lesson with daily use of some modern technology such as Google Maps and GPS. So in general, I would say that students are developing some skills and also some consciousness to identify solutions mathematically. So in general, I would say two challenges that I faced in this activity. Number one is that data is a relatively unfamiliar term for 8th graders, and they're still developing skills and mindset for using math-related data for real-life decision-making. Because of that, I had to give specific examples for them to make connections rather than letting them generating research questions or methods. But I would say that in the long term, I am quite hopeful because they're still in grade 8, so they have grade 9 and grade 10 to develop this kind of research-oriented mindset in order to finish their MYP learning. And also because the time was limited, so to guide students for writing in-depth reflection is kind of challenging. Because of that, I actually gave them exit tickets for later engagement. So in general, I would say that this is a great opportunity for me to really see how they can really use research skill explicitly to help them to finish their summative assessment. And I hope that students learn a lot from this process as well. Thank you.